The sound of gold anklets echoed down the marble hallway, soft but sharp, the kind of sound that meant someone important was coming. The palace lights were low that night, candles flickering against the Ottoman tiles that shimmered like trapped stars. In those dim reflections walked a woman who used to be a slave, and was now about to become the legal wife of the most powerful man on earth. Her name? Hurrem, or as history would remember her, Roxolana, the red-haired enchantress who flipped an empire upside down. But before that night, before the music, the whispers, the scandal, the Ottoman palace was already a powder keg, and Hurrem? She was the spark. Nobody in Istanbul could have imagined that a Christian girl from some tiny Polish village would one day rewrite the destiny of the Ottoman dynasty. She was just a teenager when Tatar raiders snatched her from her home, sold into slavery like thousands of others, and dragged across the Black Sea. But here's the crazy part. While everyone else cried or broke down, Hurrem did something no one saw coming. She laughed. Straight up laughed. The guards said it freaked them out, this girl smiling after losing everything. But that laugh? That wasn't madness. It was defiance. Her armor. Even her new name, Hurrem, meant the cheerful one. And yeah, she played that role like a pro. When she entered the imperial harem, she didn't fight the system. She studied it. She watched. She listened. She figured out how the game worked, and then learned to play it better than anyone else. See, the Ottoman harem wasn't just a beauty contest. It was a political machine. Every woman there, from the lowest servant to the sultan's favorite, was part of a war. A silent war. For survival. For power. For love. And at the top of that golden cage sat Mahidevran Sultan, the sultan's longtime favorite and the mother of his first son, Mustafa. She was drop-dead gorgeous, proud, and dangerously jealous. For years, she ruled that palace like a queen. Then Hurrem showed up. No jewels. No title. No powerful family name. Just that smile, those green eyes, and a brain sharp enough to slice marble. At first, everyone laughed at her. The other women whispered, mocked her accent, called her names. But soon, they stopped laughing, because the Sultan started spending more and more nights in her chamber. 1 week turned into 2, then months. Then the whispers started. And then the impossible happened. Suleiman stopped visiting anyone else. People said Hurrem bewitched him. Maybe she did. But what really happened was something way more dangerous. It was connection. Intimacy. See, Suleiman wasn't just some guy. He was Suleiman the Magnificent. The man who ruled from Budapest to Baghdad. He could conquer cities in a day. But no one had ever conquered him. No one had ever talked to him like Hurrem did. She didn't flatter him. She roasted him. She'd roll her eyes when he bragged about his victories. She'd tease him for ignoring his people's pain. And somehow he loved it. For the first time, someone saw him not as a god, but as a man. And in the Ottoman world, that was revolutionary. One night, after a long military campaign, Suleiman got a letter in delicate handwriting. It wasn't political, it wasn't poetic, it was real. Hurrem wrote, "My Sultan, my soul's light, your absence burns my heart like fire. If I could, I'd fly to you like a bird to the sun." When his aides found him reading it, they said his eyes looked human. From that moment on, Hurrem wasn't just another woman in the harem. She was his confidant, his partner, his weakness. But not everyone saw it that way. To the palace elite, she was still just a foreign slave. Her growing power was an insult to Ottoman blood. Even the Sultan's own mother, Hafsa Sultan, warned him, "My son, love her if you must, but don't marry her. A slave can never be your queen." Suleiman didn't answer, but the seed was planted. By the time the whispers of their marriage started floating through the Topkapi Palace, the whole empire was tense. The viziers didn't trust it. The janissaries thought it was weakness. And the women of the harem? They were furious, especially Mahidevran. She'd already lost everything. Her power, her place, her pride. Years earlier, in a fit of jealousy, she'd attacked Hurrem, clawing her face in rage. That single act had backfired big time. Suleiman banished her from his chambers forever. But now, hearing that this ex-slave might actually marry him, that was it. She snapped. "The empire will burn before she wears the crown," she reportedly spat. And honestly, she wasn't wrong. Because Hurrem's marriage would break a 200-year tradition. No Ottoman sultan had legally married anyone in 2 centuries. It was basically the empire's rulebook, No wives, no alliances, no political baggage. Marriage meant loyalty, and loyalty meant danger. But Suleiman didn't care. He was gone, hooked. And in the Ottoman court, love was the most dangerous weapon of all. So when the order came down for a royal wedding, the entire empire froze. Some thought it was fake news. Others thought it was a political stunt. But no, it was real. The palace went into overdrive. Gold banners, musicians from across the empire, halls decked out like paradise. Hurrem Sultan, once a slave, was about to become the legal wife of the emperor of the East and West. The streets of Istanbul went dead silent when her carriage rolled by. People stared. Some whispered, "She bewitched him." Others said, "Nah, she's just smarter than all of them." Both were true. The night before the wedding, Hurrem sat by her window overlooking the Bosphorus, moonlight spilling over her reflection. She smiled, not a proud smile, but a knowing one. She'd played the game long and hard, survived jealous rivals, betrayals, and the labyrinth of palace politics. And now she'd reached the top. But she wasn't naive. She knew love in the palace came with a cost. Behind her laughter was calculation. Behind her tenderness, strategy. Hurrem didn't just want love, she wanted security. She wanted power, not for greed, but for survival. She knew as long as she was just a concubine, her sons were doomed. Ottoman law allowed royal brothers to kill each other for the throne. By marrying Suleiman, she wasn't chasing romance. She was protecting her bloodline. Then came the day, April 1534. The call to prayer echoed over the city. Inside the palace, Hurrem was bathed, perfumed, dressed in crimson silk embroidered with gold. As she walked toward the grand hall, the air went still. Every eye followed her, some burning with envy, others with awe. At the center stood Suleiman, tall, stoic, untouchable. When he took her hand, the empire itself seemed to gasp. This wasn't just a wedding. It was a rebellion against tradition. The ceremony was official, sealed by the chief mufti himself. Hurrem became Haseki Sultan, the Sultan's legal wife and the first woman in Ottoman history to hold that title. Fireworks lit up the night sky, poets sang praises, and the city glowed like gold. But inside the palace walls, silence, fear, fury. Mahidevran wept. The viziers exchanged worried looks. The eunuchs whispered, "Something's going to happen tonight. Something big." The golden candles were lit. The doors to the Sultan's private chamber closed, and the empire held its breath. No one knew what would happen next, love or betrayal, devotion or manipulation. But one thing was clear. After that night, the Ottoman Empire would never be the same again. Because what went down inside that chamber, between a man called Magnificent and a woman once called Slave, would rewrite the rules of power forever. Hurrem Sultan's wedding night wasn't just about passion. It was about survival. And baby, it came with a price. The night dropped over Istanbul like a velvet blanket soaked in gold. The palace wasn't loud. It was alive in that heavy kind of silence that makes even the guards tiptoe like they're walking on glass. Inside the Sultan's private chamber, hundreds of candles flickered, their flames bending like they knew they were witnessing something legendary. And there she was, Hurrem, standing in her red silk gown that flowed like liquid fire, her face glowing under a gold veil. Not a single tremor, not one nervous twitch. Most women would have been shaking in their slippers on a night like this. But Hurrem? Nah. She stood calm, smiling, like someone who already knew how the story ends while everyone else was still flipping the first page. Then came Suleiman, slow, steady, all power and mystery. The dude who conquered half the damn world looked, for once, uncertain. This wasn't about lust. He did plenty of that. This was something else, something deeper. Because the woman standing in front of him didn't look like a concubine. She looked like fate in human form. When he reached her, she didn't drop to her knees or bow like the others. She just dipped her head, respectful but still in control. "You wear your courage like a crown," he said, low and steady. Hurrem tilted her head, that sly little smirk playing on her lips. "And you wear your power like a prison," she shot back. Boom! Dead silence. Nobody, and I mean nobody, had ever spoken to the Sultan like that before. The air between them cracked, electric, dangerous. Then, out of nowhere, he laughed. A soft, surprised laugh that broke the tension clean in half. He lifted her veil, and there they were. Those green eyes, sharp, fearless, and sparkling with something that could burn empires. And just like that, history tilted. Nobody outside that chamber knew it yet, but the Ottoman world had just shifted. Later that night, when the candles melted down to stubs, the whispers started. Servants pressed their ears to the doors, waiting to hear something. Anything. A cry, a gasp, proof of what went down behind those gold-draped walls. But instead, they heard music, a soft lute, and laughter, hers. That laugh echoed like prophecy. By sunrise, Hurrem wasn't just another woman in silk. She was the woman. The Sultan didn't send her back to the harem like tradition demanded. Hell no. He ordered a private chamber for her, right next to his. The palace went nuts. Viziers called it insanity. The harem screamed witchcraft. And Mahidevran, the former favorite, lost her damn mind, tearing through her room like a storm. "She'll destroy everything," she yelled. And, well, she wasn't wrong. Because the next morning, when Hurrem strutted down those marble halls, even the eunuchs dropped their gaze. She wasn't walking. She was gliding straight up queen energy. Every step she took sent shockwaves through the empire. Weeks rolled by, and the Sultan? He was gone, totally lost in her. He stopped showing up to councils, ignored his mother, even iced out his oldest friend, Ibrahim Pasha. He was out here writing love poems like a man possessed, calling her his light, his spring, his joy. For an Ottoman ruler? That was wild. Love wasn't part of the playbook. But Hurrem? She wasn't just love. She was strategy wrapped in a smile. She learned Ottoman, Arabic, Persian. She studied politics through gossip and power through patience. Every move she made was a checkmate. Even Suleiman started to notice. When Hurrem smiled, the entire palace seemed to hold its breath. Then came the first real test. The queen mother, Hafsa Sultan, fell sick. The harem turned into a silent war zone. Whispers, bribes, alliances. Mahidevran tried to crawl her way back into the Sultan's life, but Hurrem was already 10 moves ahead. She took care of Hafsa personally, reading Quranic verses at her bedside, serving her tea, winning her trust. When the old queen died, everyone thought Hurrem was finished. Instead, she leveled up. She became untouchable. After the funeral, she did something that made even the bravest viziers clutch their robes. She asked Suleiman to marry her. Officially, like legit wedding vows. No side chick status, no concubine title. A real wife. Suleiman was stunned. For centuries, Ottoman sultans never married their slaves. It kept politics clean. Marriage meant bloodlines, property, alliances, chaos. But Hurrem didn't flinch. She just looked him dead in the eye and said, "If I'm good enough to share your nights, I'm good enough to share your name." Damn. For days, the palace froze. The viziers begged him to drop it. "It'll wreck the empire," they warned. But Suleiman? He didn't care. Love had turned into defiance. He went public, announced to the world that he was marrying Hurrem Sultan, the slave girl from Ruthenia. Boom. History rewritten in one sentence. That night, their real wedding night, wasn't about lust or politics. It was about destiny. They stood by the window, the Bosphorus shimmering under moonlight. "You know," he whispered, "they'll never forgive me for this." Hurrem smiled, her eyes like fire. "Then let's make it worth it." He smiled back. And that was it, the spark that lit an empire. Outside, guards watched as the candles in the royal suite burned till morning. Some swore they saw 2 shadows dancing, merging into one. And when the first call to prayer echoed across the city, the dawn wind carried a new truth. The Ottoman Empire would never be the same again. Because that night, love didn't just conquer hearts, it hijacked history.